All right, friends, thank you for joining us. It is 7:02 in Colorado, and so we're going to get started. For those who don't know me, I'm Elia Falk. I'm the rabbi and director at Ramah in the Rockies. Along with us, we have our assistant director, Julia Chatnover. We have members of our board, and most importantly, we have two of our doctors, Dr. Ali Levine and Dr. Marcus Oginski. This evening, I'm actually going to start just by acknowledging Martin Luther King Day, and then also we're going to go in, really just talk for about 10, 15 minutes, an overview of our Have I been muted that whole time? Matt, good. Where did you lose me?
We lost you when you were saying that we're going to start with a little bit of an overview.
Okay, great. Anyway, you'll figure you'll figure it out. So today is Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King was a leader who really dedicated his life to highlighting racial injustice and challenging all Americans to come to terms with systemic racism in our country. We as an American Jewish community, by and large, have enjoyed immense privilege in this country. The fact that amidst an out of control pandemic with literally thousands of people dying every day here in our country, we're gathered here right now to talk about the summer, and summer camp is really a reflection of this privilege. The fact that we have a ranch to call our own, where we welcome hundreds of kids every summer, is again really just a reflection of this privilege. Our ranch was actually purchased from the Girl Scouts, who purchased it from the Gilmore family, who purchased it from a family, I actually don't know their name, who actually purchased it from two homestead families who took possession of the land in the 1880s. So before we begin our town hall tonight, talking about the upcoming summer, I want to offer a traditional lands acknowledgement as a way to honor the values that MLK dedicated his life to seeing take root in America. And today, in 2021, we have to continue to hold these values. We have to continue to uphold these values in order for us to have a more just and equitable future for all. So the traditional lands acknowledgement, and perhaps some of you have heard this at other meetings, is a way just to begin by acknowledging where we are. I want to recognize and respect the indigenous peoples as traditional stewards of this land on which Ramah in the Rockies runs, and the enduring relationship that exists between indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Before being settled by the white homesteaders in the 1880s, our ranch was the home of the Ute and the Cheyenne Native Americans. And tonight I want to acknowledge the traditional relationship of the Cheyenne and the Ute to the place that we today call home, Ramah in the Rockies. So thank you. We're going to begin with our just explaining why we are doing this, not just now, but like why we're going through this whole exercise. When running a camp, it's really easy to run when everything is going well. It's a lot harder to run when you don't actually know what's coming behind the next corner. And so part of the way that we run our camp is we're constantly doing scenario planning. Scenario planning means that we're just imagining all the different scenarios that might occur, both extremely happy ones, such as how we're going to celebrate Shabbat on a typical Shabbat, two things not as wonderful. And so the way that we've gone about our reopening plan for 2021 is to really just imagine what it would look like to open camp 6 weeks from today, based on what we know right now and what we think to be true in 6 weeks from now. We know that when the summer comes, the facts are going to be different than they are right now. We don't know exactly what'll be this summer. And so rather than just sit on our hands and say, we'll figure it out in May, we decided to go through this exercise beginning in November, continuing every 4 to 6 weeks, republishing our plan based on where the facts are right now and where the facts are going to lead us. So please do not think that what we have sent to you at this moment is set in stone. It is not. One of the reasons we have these meetings every 4 to 6 weeks is also to hear your thoughts, your questions. For those who are with us about 6 weeks ago when we last met in an evening, you'll see we've changed some stuff, and we continue to meet every 3 to 4 weeks with our COVID planning committee as we update our plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
So our plan is based on really 5 core assumptions. This is outlined in our summer roadmap that is available on our website. Hopefully you've all had a chance to see it. And these, I'm going to give Matt a sec, there we go. These core assumptions are as follows. The first core assumption is that we continue to believe that we as a community can operate safely. That the board believes that we can operate safely, that we as a year-round team, that our medical team believes that we can operate safely. Safety of our campers and our staff, anyone in our community, is our #1 priority. So if we at any point feel that, hey, it's not really going to be possible for us to operate safely, we will say, hey, we're not going to run camp this summer. Really right now and going into the future, we truly do continue to believe that we can operate safely. The second piece is that regulators will allow us to operate. So we are a licensed childcare facility in the state of Colorado. We are in Jefferson County, and we are dependent on the Jefferson County Health Department and the state of Colorado, the childcare licensing, to allow us to operate. We really believe that going into the summer, this will happen, that we'll have clear guidelines from our regulatory agencies, but that of course is one of the pieces that will that is necessary to be in place in order for us to run this summer. Our third assumption is that vaccines will not be widely available for campers. Obviously, we're all in the midst of seeing this initial vaccine rollout. Maybe you know people who've been vaccinated, are healthcare workers, educators, frontline essential workers. And it seems like, you know, maybe there's a possibility that some other folks in our community, maybe some of our staff, definitely our medical team will be vaccinated. But what we're hearing from scientists, from our medical team, is that vaccines are not going to be widely available for campers come summer, that most of our, if not all of our camper population will not have been vaccinated. We also unfortunately believe that COVID will still be present in our communities, that it's still going to be something we're thinking about come summer. Hopefully we'll see a decline in COVID cases, but we think that it will still be present. And with that comes the possibility that COVID could come to camp. We're not operating under the assumption that we can create an impervious bubble. COVID is going to still be around and has the possibility of entering our community. And lastly, that testing will be readily available and affordable, that we'll be able to do testing, both rapid and the more accurate PCR testing, on site at an affordable rate, so that we can continue to monitor the health of our community throughout the summer.
Probably the biggest change that will affect all of us right now is our summer dates. For those who were following along at home, we shifted our dates by a few days. In the question answer, by the way, forgot to mention, if you have questions, put it in the chat. Matt Levitt is going to be monitoring the chat, and he'll either, at the end, we'll definitely stop and ask questions. In between, if there's anything pressing, we will do that as well. Basically, the overall idea of our dates is that we want to really make sure that we're taking care of our staff, the physical and mental health of our staff. I, as a camp director here, and I can tell you most of the camp directors that I speak to, what we are really, really concerned about this summer is how do we keep our staff physically and mentally healthy when we will not be allowing them to leave and have days off the way that they have in previous years. For those people here who were former staff members and now you are parents of campers, you know how important it is to be able to go into town and kind of relax on days off. We're not going to be doing that this summer. So we were able to actually shorten our staff week from 14 to 10 days based on the new quarantine rules in the state of Colorado. And we also really wanted to make sure that our staff had significant time off between session 1 and session 2 to relax, to train, and also to clean in order to really make sure that our session 2 campers are coming into a totally clean environment. And the last thing is, unfortunately, we did have to cancel our B sessions, 1B and 2B. We have to shift our sessions with the basic idea that people can arrive at any time. Sorry, people can arrive all at once and they can leave, but we just can't have new people entering into our community because we really are looking to basically lock down and create as much of a bubble as we are able to, given the fact that we are running a summer camp where people do come in and out.
And just, I want to add for the people, thank you, Max, for pointing out, for the people watching on Facebook, it should say 2A, where under session 1, July 19th through August 2nd, 2A, not 1A, since I know you on Facebook can't see the chat. These dates are available on our website on the dates and rates page if you want to go back and reference as well.
Is this Matt? Next, there we go. Transportation. For those who are following I'm on Zoom, you can read the transportation. Just high level is 1, we will be announcing flights in February. 2, we are going to be meeting flights only from major cities instead of meeting we used to meet any flight from anywhere. Our goal is really to limit the amount of time that our staff are going to be spending in the airport. And our gathering spot is going to be in a different place. Actually, for those who know the Denver airport, there's an outdoor covered place with a lot of, typically in previous years, we find the most narrow confined space so we can really herd everybody into one small area. This year, we're doing something different. We're going to be outdoors, and we'll be heading up to camp together on buses. On departure, we basically will walk your child to any Southwest airline flight that leaves between 10 and 2 p.m. We believe that this will accommodate over 90% of our camper families. If you are coming from a place where this is not going to work, hopefully you'll be in touch with us. There have been a few major cities. We just discovered this past week that Southwest Airlines has significantly changed their schedule based on what we have been used to doing the previous few years. So we'll definitely work with families, but the overall goal is to limit the number of times that our staff is going in and out of security and on that tram. You also will have an option for those who are local to either drop your kids off at the airport and we'll bring them from there, or to bring your kids directly to Ramah in the Rockies. Unfortunately, this year we're not going to be able to, whether you're local or flying in and renting a car and vacation in Colorado, we're not going to be able to give you the full grand tour the way that we have in previous years. Again, just really trying to be conscious of the fact that we do have the bubble that we are trying to create. If people have specific transportation questions, definitely in the Q&A you can ask, and hopefully you've seen more about this. And as we get closer to the time, we'll be giving you way more details about exactly what drop-off and pickup day will look
like. We wanted to also review briefly just the testing plans and protocols for the summer. I know I mentioned in our core assumptions that was one of the pieces. So we shared this in our last town hall. This is also in the written document, but to reiterate, so our plan for testing, our plan is that all campers and staff will be asked to show proof of a negative PCR test taken no more than 72 hours before arrival to camp. So that will be something that we're requesting from you in order to get off the bus, put your kid on the plane in order to come to camp. After we arrive, within the first few days, maybe later in the presentation, Dr. Ali or Dr. Marcus can address the specifics. It sounds like it's going to be about the 5-day mark right now. We'll be retesting our whole community. So when staff arrive, 5 days in, we'll do a test. When our first session campers arrive, 5 days in, and second session again, retesting. so that we are testing anytime new community members are joining. We're also looking into additional tools for community testing, rapid testing in the cases of campers or anyone showing symptoms, pooled testing procedures, so looking at a whole bunk or cohort together, and also wastewater testing and monitoring to monitor the health of our community as a whole. Again, we'll be in touch as we get closer with more details about how you're going to submit the proof of the negative PCR, the exact timing of testing. I'll say in general, our expectation is that families, campers, staff members will be responsible for the cost. I know in general, these are covered by insurance or covered if you don't have insurance, but responsible for the cost of testing before you arrive at camp. We will be handling any costs that are incurred from testing that occurs at camp.
I just want to jump in here regarding the pre-camp testing. I had already gotten some questions, especially with our friends on the East Coast, for whom you might be coming straight from school or night at home and then come from on the Rockies on that Thursday. We are not asking families to shelter in place at home before coming to camp. What we are asking / insisting is that anybody sending their kid to our camp adhere to the strictest guidelines around masking and around only being unmasked the 14 days prior to arrival at camp with your immediate family members who are living in your house, not your grandparents, not your aunts, your uncles, unless they happen to live in your house. So if you have a big graduation party on Tuesday with just your immediate family or 50 people, please don't come to our camp this summer. We really see this as a way of maintaining health within our entire community. Most of our campers, if not are coming who are in person in school, are in schools where masking is required. If you happen to be in a school where masking is not required or not adhered to, then we should certainly be in communication. And it is unlikely that you would be able to come to camp if you are right now in a school, or come June, if you were sitting in class, only half the people are masked. So I want to just state that. And in terms of the specifics around the testing, on the committee level, we have basically said we'll worry about all the details of testing if it's on day 5 or day 6, if we're using this pool test or this company's test, much later on. That is one of the areas where we do expect that the facts are going to be wildly different in late May, early June than they are right now in January. Julia, take it away. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also, one of the things that we added to this update of our roadmap is some more details about what would happen if there should be a case at camp, if your child, or if you're a parent of a staff member here, if that person tests positive, and also what happens to the people that they've been in close contact with, their cohorts. So if an individual tests positive, they will be isolated in the Mirpa'a, our health center, and supervised by our medical staff. Obviously, if someone is showing severe symptoms, like any medical situation, the doctor at camp will evaluate them and decide if someone needs to go down to Denver for further medical attention. But in general, if someone is showing minor symptoms, they can be isolated in our Mirpa'a. That isolation per the CDC is a minimum of 10 days and until they have been fever-free for at least 24 hours. So that means it could at least 10 days and could be more for anyone who tests positive. Because of this, because of sort of the camper experience of being isolated, as much as we want to provide for your child and make sure they're still having a good time at camp, the reality of isolation at camp is it's not what someone wants to be doing. So if a camper is has less than 2 weeks left at camp, we're going to be requiring that a parent pick up your child either from camp, or will make arrangements to bring your child down to Denver to meet you there. If a camper has more than 2 weeks left at camp, we are comfortable continuing to do isolation at camp. Or if you're local, or if you as a parent want to fly in and care for your child in Denver, they can leave camp and then after they're cleared from isolation, return back to camp. We are exploring the possibility. We know that so many of our families come from out of state. So we are exploring the possibility of specifically providing a space in Denver for out-of-state families, for campers to isolate if needed with their parents for a short period of time, just to make sure that you as a parent, if God forbid your child should have COVID, aren't worrying about the logistics of how you're going to isolate. We're exploring that possibility. We want to share that with our community. We don't have any specifics yet. So that's someone who tests positive confirmed case. So what happens to their OHEL, to their bunk, or to the rest of their cohort? That whole group will be quarantined and monitored together in Ramah Valley. For those of you who've been to camp before, you know that our Ramah Valley cabins is a circle of 7 what we call cabins, little cabins, and 2 staff tents, which will be, that whole area this summer will be converted specifically to run a quarantine camp if needed. That area already has its own bathrooms and showers, and we'll be putting up a dedicated dining tent specifically if we should need to quarantine a group. And the goal there is that we're really able to continue camp style activities as a group. Of course, they'll continue to be monitored for any symptoms, but that there will be fun and games, and the counselors will create activities if that whole cohort needs to be quarantined in Ramah Valley. And then again, after the isolation period is up, after the quarantine period is up, rejoin the camp community as a whole in whatever way that looks like at that point in the summer. So I want to also address sort of what we don't know yet. We are really doing our best to be transparent as possible. And obviously we've gone through a year of so much unknown. So here's some of the things that we're still working on, still trying to figure out. We're still trying to determine to what extent our cohorts, so we've said that our Ohalim, our bunks, will likely be our cohorts, but whatever that cohort size is, to what extent can they interact when they are masked, distanced, and outdoors? We know that they're not going to be interacting unmasked this summer, but what can they do when they're masked and distanced and outdoors? And how is this different during organized time and free time? Something we're still trying to figure out, really based on what the county and state tells us, what is considered a close contact, so that we're not in a situation where we have to isolate all of camp, or have a situation where the county sees us as having an outbreak in all of camp. The other piece is vaccinations. What happens if our whole staff is vaccinated? How does that change our calculus around interactions, around our program? So these are things we're still working on. We're going to continue to communicate with you as we determine more, as we receive more guidance from our county and from the state. And we hope to be able to provide more information about what this specifically will look like in upcoming town halls and in upcoming versions of the roadmap. So with that, I want to invite any questions. The best way to do this is to go ahead and put it in the chat, ideally directly to Matt, although we'll also monitor for chats that come in general. And Matt, I'm going to let you moderate to let us know what questions we should be answering.
Let me just answer a few about travel that I saw. One, our plan right now is that, and Dr. Ali Levine is here as well. So I'm going to punt all medical questions to Dr. Ali. But in terms of travel from the airport, our plan right now is to be traveling on school buses with windows open. I would encourage everybody to bring some earphones because it is going to be wicked loud, as I believe the technical term is, and up the mountain. The idea there is just to really increase airflow. For those who really want to know, on the way back, we'll probably be in vans, but to be determined. And was there another travel question, Matt, that I miss here? No, I think that was the big travel question. In terms of masking at camp, Dr. Ali, why don't you kind of give the theory on masking, and why don't you give the theory on masking? Go ahead.
So the idea with the masking throughout camp is that we are trying to, part of it is medical, and I think the roadmap has a really nice part of our decision making is medical, and part is so that we can adhere to the Jefferson County regulations and avoid camp being shut down when we have a case. And so we're trying to protect camp from that situation where we'd have to have multiple groups quarantined, and Jefferson County would say, that's it, you're done. And so if we have people masked and outside, even after the period of quarantine in the smaller cohorts and testing, it helps protect us from that situation.
Okay, and part of what is here is and I know there's some other medical people on as well. There is both sort of the medical halacha, the medical laws, and also Jefferson County. And as I've learned over 12 years running this camp, it really doesn't matter what common sense says. It really doesn't matter what the medical committee says. What truly matters is what our licensure says, which is run through the state of Colorado and Jefferson County. Sidebar, call me whenever you want. We'll talk politics. Please God, we will have some national guidance on this. And if not national guidance, hopefully we'll have some state guidance. Right now, Colorado is a bit of the Wild West, where every county has its own requirements. There's very little talking. If you were on, one of our other sister camps in Colorado, they basically could open doing whatever they want, whenever they want. And they're in a county where there are no regulations. We have to be in a highly, highly regulated county. Again, what will be in May, hopefully a lot more uniformity than there is right now. And we are here speaking about what we know or what we think will be in 6 weeks from now. We are all, the 120 overnight camps in Colorado have gotten together to actually lobby the governor and the governor's office of Colorado to come up with a uniform standard so that every county in Colorado, every summer camp in Colorado would have to adhere to the same guidelines. Stay tuned. We will let you know once we know. Julia, do you want to talk just a little bit about what the day-to-day will look like at camp and I guess how things will be different?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to address two pieces of that. One is that we're getting a lot of questions on. One is cohorts, and one is I saw travel between camp while we're in camp and must out. So first, to address the cohorts. Right now, we're planning that each OHEL, each bunk, will be a cohort. We did reduce our bunk size recently from usually 14. We're considering each bunk 10. Again, this is awaiting some regulation based on what the county or the state says can be our cohort size. The way our bunks are organized is that we are doing our best to keep 2-weekers and 4-weekers separate, genders, having a boys bunk and a girls bunk, and also keeping, when possible, grades separated. So though our ADOT are 2 grades, for example, if you are in Solalim and coming for 4 weeks and a girl, you will be in a bunk with other Solalim 4-week girls and potentially other Solalim 4-week 7th graders. So I saw a question specifically about bunk requests. If your child, please email us. We don't usually take bunk requests, you're right. We're happy to let you know sort of the possibility of your child being in the same bunk as their friend. We know that kids really miss each other and we want to do our best to accommodate. So we'll let you know, hey, if your child is coming for the same period of time, that we can do our best to keep them together. So that's sort of what our cohorts will look like. We're anticipating that cohorts will travel together through our different activities. So much like our younger kids traditionally have done, we're anticipating, at least in the first 2 weeks of each session, that you'll rotate through activities with your bunk, together with your madrichim, with your counselors, and that you'll spend most of your time in that cohort. Our hope is that after the first 10 days, 2 weeks, we'll be able to expand our cohort, start considering a larger group as our cohort. At least that's my understanding. So considering our whole ADA, our whole age group as a cohort, instead of just our bunk. I saw a specific question about Jolie. Our hope is to consider all of Jolie as one cohort. It's significantly larger than our other cohorts, but in order for that program to have the experience that we really want for all of our Jolie Chalutzim, we are planning to consider the whole ADA as a cohort.
Julia, I'm asking for a second now that you've described the cohorts. So to clarify, we are not going to have campers and their particular staff members mask around their particular cohort even from the beginning. So they can be inside their OHEL without a mask, they can be sleeping without their mask, they'll be eating at the table without their mask every time they're with their particular cohort. If they're at an activity where there's also a specialist there, then they should wear their masks, because the Chugim specialists are not going to be within one single cohort. But when they're all together in their OHEL doing something just with their counselors on their own, no, they don't need to mask. I hope that clarifies the question.
Yeah, and just to
Thanks, Dr. Ali.
what Julie didn't mention is we anticipate that we'll be able to run most of our regular programming at camp in a slightly modified fashion. So we expect to have susim, horses, and archery, and omanut, and climbing. Where things will differ will be in the first 2 weeks. Older campers will go around with everybody else in their cohort, which again will most likely be their bunk, their OHEL, their tent, all synonyms. And only in the second 2 weeks will we see the choice that really we've been building up over the years. Similarly, the Masa'ot, the first 2 weeks, you will go on a Masa, probably a shortened Masa, with everybody in your OHEL, in your tent, and only in the second 2 weeks we'll be able to have the choice, because in the second 2 weeks we will have significantly more freedom of movement.
And I saw questions about travel during camp. So when we're traveling to our Masa'ot, if we are traveling in mixed groups, we'll keep the windows open as much as possible. We'll wear masks in the vans. But for the most part, anytime we're going in a van or a closed space to travel somewhere like a bus, that will be just with our cohort. So it'll be okay to be all together in that space. I see also a question about plan for testing and treatment in the case of suspected COVID during Masa'ot. This is an excellent question. I will be honest that we haven't discussed it yet. It will go on the agenda for our medical committee and our short-term plan committee. As always, all of our Masa'ot will go out with some sort of satellite communication device, and I assume that there will be a protocol to call back into camp, to check in, to describe the symptoms, to talk to Dr. Ali or Dr. Marcus or whomever the doctor is on call. All of our Masa'ot also we're planning to run Masa'ot a little bit closer to camp this summer, so that we have easier access to return to camp, shorter trips, so fewer stops at gas stations and the like, and also closer to medical care if we should need it. Matt, were there any other sort of general? Oh, go ahead, Rabbi Eliav.
Yeah, I wanted to answer the question about the pre-camp adherence to policies. Really, it comes down to us following the CDC guidelines. So, if the question was specifically, what about a school where masks are required but not at lunch? I'm going to throw that open to if kids are adhering by the CDC guidelines, which is having lunch outside 6 feet apart. That's fine. If it's having lunch together in a small closet, not so fine. And really the way I'm just gonna emphasize is a single child bringing COVID into camp is basically going to mean that their entire cohort now has to spend 10 days secluded in Ramah Valley. So it's not going to be up to me to make sure that this is really being followed. It's really going to be up to us as a collective. If we want to make camp happen this summer, then we're all going to have a little bit of discomfort. And our teenagers who, I've heard through the grapevine have not necessarily been so strict about every single protocol are really going to have to double down, because I really believe we'll be able to run an incredible camp program this summer. And I know that, if 10 or 20 kids end up spending 10 days in Ramah Valley, it is going to be a very, very different kind of program than what the other 160, 80, 200 kids are experiencing. And I really want everybody to have the full Ramah and the Rockies experience. So as we get closer, we'll figure out again where the CDC is. My guess is that the state of Colorado will come out with their own guidelines. We hope that the testing will be a piece of it as well. again, just stay tuned.
So I just wanted to jump in and give Allie space to answer two questions. One is around interactions between siblings in different cohorts. And then also a question, if everyone arrives the same time, what is the rationale to keep 2-week and 4-week campers separate? So if you can just speak to those two, Allie.
As far as the first question, once people get to camp, we are really trying to keep them within their cohort. And so siblings, even though they just spent the last however many months together in the same bubble, have to be in their own OHEL bubble, but they should be able to interact with each other, masked, distance, and outside. And certainly if siblings need each other and need to see each other, my understanding from Eliav and Julia is that they can mask, distance, and outside, just so that we continue to protect that cohorting. And I think maybe Julia can answer better to the 2-week and 4-week bunks.
Yeah, this is more actually a program decision than it is a COVID decision, as Dr. Allie deferring to me points to. What we've really seen over the years is that keeping our 2-weekers and our 4-weekers separate is better just overall in terms of the program itself. That instead of our 2-weekers feeling sad that the other kids in their bunk are staying longer than they are, or our 4-weekers thinking, oh, should I leave at the 2-week mark? Keeping those groups separate really helps both groups have a better experience. In some cases, we will have mixed 2- and 4-week bunks. So for those of you who've been with us for a long time, you know that often Ilanot, our youngest Ada, is mixed 2- and 4-week. In some cases, our 5th and 6th graders might be mixed just to accommodate all of our 5th graders being together and all of our 6th graders being together. So it's really going to depend on numbers and also what we think is best in terms of keeping the two governing principles of keeping 2-weekers and 4-weekers separate for the sake of the program, and keeping the grades separate within each ADA, just so that they continue to stay with the same campers over the course of their camp lifetime and experience overall.
Yeah, and the question there, which was asked by Leanne as well, about boys and girls being separate. Initially, our plan is to cohort, like sitting here right now, if we're open in 6 weeks, we would say that each bunk is its own cohort, period. It is possible that based on the regulations coming from the state, Jefferson County, that in fact will make it 2 bunks, or maybe 3 bunks, or maybe even an entire ADA. Like honestly, we don't know exactly what the cohort's going to be. It is going to be months and months until we can fully decide that. And part of that also goes to Michael's question about what does Jefferson County say? I will tell you this, Michael. Jefferson County has to change their regulations, because at this exact moment, their regulations are so prohibitive. They are treating us the same way as a infant care room. And we just couldn't open right now based on where Jefferson County is. There was every indication that they will, even though we are knee deep in planning the summer, they are not seeing it as urgent to actually update their regulations. So at this moment, you cannot either, like on our property, if you want to rent out our incredible, here's a plug. We got this amazing retreat center, 50 people can stay there in the dead of winter in hotel style rooms. But right now we may not have more than 10 people on our property who are not in the same family, because it's not allowed in Jefferson County. Please God, they will be changing that regulation in the coming months. Yeah. I will just
add, Eliab, to that for our families to know that I do meet regularly with the governor's office and with our the Colorado Camps Network, which Eliab mentioned earlier, which is kind of the cohort of 120 plus summer camps in Colorado coming together to lobby on behalf of our interests, literally, so that we can operate camp this summer. And so I think it's important for our families and parents and staff to know that we are working on these regulations, and hopefully what they tell us right now is that at sometime in February, they'll begin considering summer camp, and that by early April, they'll actually have some final guidance on how we'll be able to operate. So that is something that we are actively working on, and recognize that we need their partnership in order to be successful this summer. So go ahead, Julia.
I was going to say also, I want to recognize that camp is an investment and a financial commitment. And reiterate our commitment that if you do want to withdraw, if you don't feel comfortable with our COVID protocols or your family situation changes, that full refunds are available through March 1st. And of course, if we are unable to operate, if the county or the state says we cannot operate, we will be offering full refunds as well, even if that decision date is after March 1st. And also, if your family's financial situation has changed, you're already registered for camp, but concerned about affording camp, our financial aid process is still open. And we have never turned away a camp or we have made it possible for every camper who registers before March 1st to attend camp regardless of financial situation every year of our history, and we intend to do so as well. So if you would like more information about our financial aid process, or you're a family who hasn't yet registered, please visit our website or send Rabbi Eliav or I an email. We want to make it work for every family.
I want to address the Shabbat question and reiterate that we believe we can run most of our regular programs in a modified fashion. This includes Shabbat. I am 100% certain every Friday evening until Saturday night, it's going to be Shabbat at Ramah on the Rockies. If I were a betting man right now, I would probably say Shabbat's going to look a little different than it usually does, especially the first Shabbat of each session, where we're going to be in much tighter cohorts. What it's going to look like, frankly, I don't know exactly because we're going to have to see kind of like how many people can we actually have eating in one place. What I am certain is not going to be happening is we are not going to have 300 people packed into our brand new, incredible Chadar Ochel, yelling and screaming, having shira, and having a giant mosh pit. Please God, 2022, we'll be back to doing that. It will probably be the indoor pieces of it will probably be way more distanced, way more subdued. But we could absolutely imagine having us all outside in Ramah Valley for Kabbalat Shabbat, probably a lot more distance than usual. Maybe we'll be on the the site of the old Chadar Ochel. We're really going to have to play this by ear based on seeing again where COVID is, the prevalence in the communities, what the regulations are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I certainly do hope that we'll be able to have salmon and some awesome vegetarian steak, whatever that vegetarian thing is we do once in a week, fish tacos as well. So, and tefillah in general, for people who are wondering, like that's one of the big things that we just don't know right now. Are we all gonna, be able to gather as an Eidah, to do tefillah in the way that we have in the past? I'm really not sure right now.
I also saw a question on Facebook about meals. We are planning to have some way to separate out we will be eating by cohort is the general overview, with distance and space between cohorts. We may have multiple meal shifts. We may expand to be eating more outside. We're lucky also for summer 2020, we had a beautiful brand new off-season winter dining pavilion that we had hoped to start using for offices during the summer, but we have the possibility to expand into that winter dining space as well. So exploring lots of spaces so that we can spread out during mealtime. But we will be primarily sitting together with our cohorts in whatever eating space we're eating in. We also had a question specifically about preparing first-time campers for coming to camp. And especially because your kids have not necessarily had in-person school. I would say talk to them about camp. We are, sharing with them what the daily schedule will look like. We have that information on our website. It won't be exactly the same this summer. Rabbi Eliav and I are also always available to chat about camp, to share what the summer will look like beyond just our COVID protocols. We'll also, I'll plug really quickly as well, we're doing info sessions every Tuesday night at 6 o'clock Mountain Time here on Zoom. And that's a great way, even if you're already registered, to just learn a little bit more about what the summer will look like, hear a little bit more about Masot and our aspirational arc and really what we do at camp. And we're happy as well to make connections between first-time campers and returning campers, especially in our older Eidot. to give you a familiar face or voice to see on the first day, to parents to connect you with other camp parents to share about the experience, and really just encouraging you to talk about going to camp, getting excited about camp, getting excited about the various activities. I will say our normal suggestion is to have sleepovers, and I don't recommend that this year, but if you can think about ways to maybe make sleeping the nighttime routine look a little different. So if you and your family can camp outside in the backyard or sleep all together in your basement or something like that, just to try something that's a little bit out of your regular bedtime routine, that can help with some of the adjustments. So you've had an opportunity to sleep in an unfamiliar space before coming to camp. Anything else, Rabbi Eliav, that you would add?
Yeah, no, I would also just add is, so we're going to meet here again in about 6-ish weeks, either the last week in February or first week in March. We encourage campers to join our weekly Tuesday information sessions. Frankly, I love seeing our older campers here. If you have like 4th, 5th, 6th graders, I would leave them off of these COVID town halls. They're not exactly so, fun. And something that I've heard, I mean, I only have one child in school 2 days a week. The other two are completely home. And my friends who have kids in school 4 or 5 days a week. What I've really just heard from everybody and seen is kids are resilient. So a lot of these things that we as parents are worrying about, like the kids are just so happy to be outside. The reality is that being high up in the Colorado Rockies, where we've been doing outdoors, we were in tents way before anybody else even thought it was cool to run a camp in tents. It kind of just works. And I have really been dreaming about, hearing the play and the laughter of the kids, watching the kids build their forts or, sit around. And so instead of being 2 feet apart, maybe they're 6 feet apart, talking about whatever it is during free time, overlooking the stream down below. And that's what's keeping me going right now. And I think at the end of the day, whether your kids have been in a very regimented school for 4 or 5 days a week, or will have been home for almost 18 months, like really only viewing other people through a screen, I think it's going to be a really important moment in their lives, and just like a freeing moment. And so, yeah, if they have to wear masks a little bit, okay, it's really not the it's really not the end of the world for a lot of the kids. And if I am, downplaying it, if you feel like I'm downplaying it, first of all, feel free to be in touch. We can talk about it. And it might well be that there are some kids, and like our staff in particular, there are going to be some incredible staff members who are going to be opting out of camp this summer because of the way that we plan to run it, because they're not going to be able to leave once a week to go see their friends in Denver or whatever it is. But I think for most of our campers, it is going to be just an absolutely incredible, joyous experience for them. So is it possible? Yeah, let me just mention that. Let's just take about the March 1st deadline. The March 1st deadline is an aspirational deadline. We will, if we cannot schedule the next town hall before March 1st, we will extend the drop the payment until afterwards. And again, at any point, if God forbid, 70 hours before camp, you find out your child has COVID, unfortunately, he or she will not be able to join us that session. There's no late arrivals, and we will issue a full refund. So while we don't want people just to kind of take our March 1st deadline as a whatever for medical reasons, if you medical and safety. So if you no longer have trust in us to care for your child for whatever reason, or you've decided that risk factors are way too high to send them to Colorado, let us know. Our goal is not to keep anybody's anybody's money. So we have time for one more question. If there is anyone, no one actually wants to be that last person. Let me just look here. We have a parent writing in that their kids are already ready to arrive on a plane tomorrow. Well, yeah, we can't take too many kids up there yet because of Jefferson County regulations, but another time. Anyway, if anybody does have questions, please, you can be in contact with me, with Julia. We have an incredible team that meets every few weeks to discuss this. We met Dr. Ali. We have another doctor and a public health professional who's been advising us. Also, really, if you think we are just like coming out of left field, too strict, too lenient, whatever it is, please email, give us feedback. We really see this as a collective, as a joint effort. I definitely don't have all the answers. I've yet to meet a medical professional who tells me that he or she has all the answers. And if there's one thing, that I've learned since last March, it's that, you know, so much of this is actually out of our control, and we're gonna just roll with it. So thank you so much. I am happy. We'll stay on. Julie and I will be the last ones off here. So if there are people here who want to talk about Jolie, feel free to stay on. We'll discuss it and answer whatever questions we can. And aside from that, Toda Rabah, Laila Tov, and we'll be in touch.